yeah, yeah. Never not, never under God, never ever, forever on. Check my repertoire, check my repertoire, don't check me not. Let's just checks involved. I've been feeling like I'm next to God, next to God, next to God.
Welcome to the Brothers in Time podcast. Right, this is going to be season 3 called Guardians. Right, I'm going to be joined with Sanchez, Hudson, and myself. Right, so we're going to have some rules for this conversation.
Rule number 1. A person who is saying something obvious should be assumed to be saying something subtle until proven otherwise. Rule number 2. A person who is saying something wrong should be assumed to be saying something counterintuitive until proven otherwise. An example is a whale a fish? At the lowest level, morphologically speaking, if it looks like a fish, it swims like a fish, therefore it's a fish. At the mid-level, it breathes air and has live birth, so it's a mammal. But at the highest level, it reverts back. We are bracketed on Darwin's phylogenetic tree between lampreys, which are clearly fishes, and coelacanths. So we don't always understand if we are sophisticated or unsophisticated relative to somebody's point of view.
My last question is, do you wholesomely believe that there could have been a better way for us to have left? Do you think it would have been possible for us either today or in 10 years or 15 years, because you know Afghanistan pretty well and the people there. Do you think we could have conjured some sort of exit strategy where we walk away and the Afghans can hold their own and actually flourish as a government and a group of people that can keep the Taliban at bay?
I can't answer that question unless I understand what it is that we want. Because when we go back to that enemy thing, right? You have the enemy, but when they're gone, you essentially create a void or a vacuum or a political vacuum, right? So that's why in Desert Storm, that's why we didn't take out Saddam, because he kept stability for the country. He may have been a turd, but he kept stability in the country. And then once we took Saddam out of power, look at where Iraq is now. You know what I mean? So once the Taliban was out of power, we had a vacuum, right? And in the army, you get taught to leave things better than when you got them.
Exactly, yeah.
So I want to go back to your thing about purpose and whether or not it was worth it and this, that, and the other that you're seeing a lot of people saying. The question is about what was the goal, right? What was our actual goal, right? And that relationship between the goal and you, right? Everything is about relativity. So your relativity to that goal, right? And every relationship is about managing expectations. It doesn't matter if you're talking on a direct level when you're talking about your wife. It doesn't matter if you're talking about an organizational level like the army, the prison system, whatever, cops. Yeah. Right? It's about expectation management. And then at the strategic level, it's like, well, what could we actually have done? What were we willing to do? And so we have two different things. You can say probable and possible, right? Is it possible that if we took the education system and developed a better education system, right? And when I say better, I'm talking about the idea of perfect, right? So you can have an idea and it be perfect in theory, but then in practice, right, in the physical, that's when you start having friction points. That's where the issues start to come up. So if we had
like the commander's intent and how that gets delegated for it to get done. Okay.
So what I'm saying is we need to know for us what the best way or the most efficient way to educate people would be, right? And if you look at our systems in America, right, because everything that you do, you're projecting your reality onto whatever object it is that you're looking at. So you're projecting your knowledge onto something else. So if we can rewrite the source code that America is running off of we would be able to understand the way in which we would be able to make an efficient change or an acceptable change. But when you talk about physiological needs in America, we have these same problems. They're not at the extremes like in Afghanistan, but we have these same problems. Like, look over the summer when you were talking about BLM and all of this stuff. Yeah. These people saw an issue, right? Whether or not the issue was what they thought it was, they saw the issue, right? And the concept is, like, if I tell you you're annoying me, you don't get to just decide that you're not annoying me. You're fucking annoying me, right? That's my subjective experience. You can't tell me it's not real.
Yeah.
Right. But step one, and I'm gonna talk a little personal or whatever, but on the direct level for me, that's like with my wife, right? And she likes to tell me all the time, you're skipping step one, and step one is validating the emotions, right? Have you ever had your wife tell you some shit and you're like, damn, that's not how it happened at all. Like, that's not at all how it happened. I don't know how you're feeling that way or why you're feeling that way.
All the time.
You guys ever had that?
All the time, bro. All the time.
So what she's telling me, right, is like, you have to validate my feelings, right? Feel what it is that I'm feeling. Try to see it from my perspective. And it's like, I'll say some shit off the cuff, you know what I mean? And to another infantry dude or another man, it ain't no big deal. You know what I'm saying? But then to her, she's like, that made me feel like this. It's like, fuck. Step one is like, I see how it made you feel like that. I'm sorry I made you feel like that. That was not my intent.
Yeah.
And understanding and validating it. Step two is then to talk about how I saw it. But what most men and most of us have the habit of doing is skipping straight to step two and being like, nope, that's not what happened. That's not what it was for me. You know, whoop-de-whoop and yada yada.
Yeah.
And it's jumping this first step. So when you're talking about on an organizational level, that first step for these people would have been like, hey, we see what you're talking about, right? It exists on some level. But what we're trying to do is differentiate what level it is and what we can actually do. Like, what actually can we change? What needs to be changed? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, that goes right back to what you said earlier. How it strikes me too when I think about the problem solving flow. I guess a lot of people here, and if you're listening and you do engineering or anything like that of that source, you don't ever want to start off with if this didn't happen, we wouldn't be where we are now. Yes, dumb fuck, that's true. But your job isn't to figure out what caused the issue. Your job is to find a solution to the problem. Yes. So yeah, no, 100%. Because you can't move forward, and that's the way I see a lot of our politics or social fucking. I'm sorry, I can't English right now. Social media, fucking media outlets. It's always, where can I find blame and where can I point the blame at, and how can I twist the truth in any way, shape, or form, or take only parts of what happened and blame it on the other side. The left can say, well, our exit strategy was something that was negotiated with the Taliban when the Trump administration was in office. But then the right can counter argue and say, yeah, but we never got to see what that extra strategy looked like because he never got reelected. It's Biden's fault that this is such a fucking ugly mess because he did it in a terrible way. But nobody wants to have that conversation, like you mentioned, where it's time to find a solution. Hey, this is what's happening right now. These people, we have decided to get out of Afghanistan. We have, veterans who might have these mental health issues that are coming up because of these incidents. And it doesn't help the fact that you have these people who don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Because like you mentioned, they can only observe what's happening. And all they're being subjected to is images of people falling off a fucking aircraft. So it's disaster, you know what I mean? And you have all these numbers and shit where you see, the Taliban seizes thousands, millions of dollars worth of fucking equipment, firearms, drones, and they kind of give that perception that it was for nothing. But at the same time, you can take a step back and realize, you know what? Maybe it was time that we left, because the same statistics that they're using to demonstrate why it was a waste of time and a waste of money, just reflects the amount of commitment that America gave and poured into Afghanistan and its allies. Yeah, we lost billions of dollars worth of equipment, but at the same time, you can take a step back and realize, you know what? We invested billions of dollars of this equipment so Afghanistan could succeed.
Well, talking about that, because I remember that was a part of your question, right? The equipment that we left, it costs more money to bring that equipment home than to leave it there. And that's what people don't understand.
That's a good point people don't make,
If you watch the movie War Dogs, if you watch the movie, I think it's Lord of War with Nicolas Cage, right, about gun running and all that stuff, they literally talk about that, about how it costs more money for a country after they go to war to remove all of their equipment. Mm-hmm. So I feel like that's a non-starter argument from jump. And the other point is that you said something about what this equipment was like. The money itself, America makes money when we go to war. So when they're talking about investing this money and spending this money, we were making it back.
Oh, right?
Yeah. It wasn't like a black hole of like trillions of dollars going down that ship. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's a very weird situation. But going back to like what help, right? About helping this country. Now people are seeing like this country needs help. This country needs, how do I say this? Right. The thing that pisses me off the most is when somebody says, I don't care what you believe, right? You can believe whatever you want, and I'm going to believe whatever I want. Fuck that. Because if you believe it's okay to say that black people are less than you, or if you believe it's okay to say because you're not Christian, you're going to go to hell and you're the devil, or because you don't believe what I believe, you should die. Your belief, right, this programming that you're running, this application or executable file that you're running in your brain is fucking wrong. I'm sorry. I'm not playing that game with people anymore.
Yeah. It's like getting caught in a fucking for loop with no, condition to exit out of the loop. You know what I mean? It's just an infinite, you're stuck. You can't exit the loop if there's no condition for you to exit the loop.
Okay, and, now we can talk about the appearance and visual understanding, right?
Yeah.
So when we're talking about veterans, right, and the reason why that they think it appears as if there was no purpose is because of the way that they're viewing the effect that they had, right? And if killing the enemy was the only thing that they thought would have given them a win, when do we ever do that, right? And when people are saying that you lose wars or America's never won a war in however many years, well, what is your definition of win? Do we seize the terrain and gain it, and then now it's ours? Do we own them, motherfuckers? Because we won't do that. Like, that's not what America's about. That's not at all what we've ever been about. It's about, we're going to give you your freedom to make your own decisions, right? But there's some, Sam Harris talks about you can derive morality from facts, right? And I believe him to an extent. Like, we can, without the existence of some higher power, I can say that it's not okay to kill somebody because I don't want to fucking die. I can say it's wrong to kill somebody. But then on the end of the police, like Hudson, right, there's a point in which a decision that you've made has taken away all of the choices that I could make for you to assist you. If you pull a gun on somebody or a knife and you have the means to kill somebody, you've just taken away my choice to save your life. Now I have to take your life in order for the preservation of security and safety for everybody else in the situation. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Would you agree with that, Hudson?
Absolutely. It's interesting. We're having that scenario today. We had a female go into a bar and say, I want 2 shots and I'm going to kill myself. And the world panics within that building, obviously, because she has a gun in her fucking hand. The moment the bartender's like, I'm calling the police, she locks herself in the bathroom, right? The suicidal individual. But now we have a scenario where inherently it's not illegal to kill yourself, right? It's not against the law. But now we have as many cops as possible surrounding this building with their guns out because she wants to hurt herself. But the possibility of her hurting the others keeps the law enforcement presence there. Yeah. It's a strange dynamic of don't point it at anyone else except for yourself. Oh my God. It's hard, dude. It's like, it's so complicated because you don't want to hurt that person. You don't want that person to hurt themselves, but you're morally obligated to protect everyone around that individual because they have the means to hurt the ones around them. Even though they could be yelling at the top of their lungs, I'm only going to kill myself.
Yeah. Jeez.
Okay, that doesn't mean that I put my gun away because I don't have any evidence up until this point that you're going to do that. Until you pull that trigger on you, yourself, or me, I have nothing else to believe but the possibility that you might hurt someone else.
Yeah. So when we were talking about the purpose and like whether or not they feel, or veterans specifically feel like there was any meaning and we did this for nothing and blah, 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 right? I feel like it's a problem of perception and like, and I feel like that problem is at a strategic level when they say that, and that problem permeates down into that direct level, right? Where it's, what are you trying to gain from every situation, right? And this goes back to, and this is, I feel like what us as Americans really need to be talking about is how to parent children. Because if we learned how to parent children perfectly, like let's just say that ideologically perfect, whatever that would be, if we could do that and we could get something as close to perfect as possible, it would be able to exist in any culture, climate, or whatever, right? That's what I would define as perfect. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So if that was possible, then we can start talking about how these perceptions about reality are coming from these children, right? Is a child a blank slate, or does it come embedded with information? Right. And I would argue that children come embedded with information, but the mass belief of people is that it's nature over nurture, right? It's nurture over nature. It's the environment in which you are a product of your environment, which is true, right? Just like that germ versus terrain theory. It's the same concept. The germ in this instance is nurture, and the terrain is nature. So are you born with this predisposed to like fucking lemons over, limes, right? Is that something that's predisposed in you? Like you're born with this. And when you look at children, right, you see that they have their own personalities, right? I'm not developing their personality, right? I'm guiding them to like through life to remove as many obstacles from them becoming the best them that they can be. And whatever them that is not up to me, right? I can't give my son a Barbie doll and make him gay, right? But that was like a predominant belief in a lot of our society for a really long time.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about the veterans and the optics of purpose, right? In children, when I had this argument the other day about participation trophies, right? When a kid is going to a sport, right? And you can talk about Paslow's conditioning in psychology, right? You want to reward the behavior that you want to see again, right? So that's the concept of participation trophies. I don't give a look. Right, I'm going to say some fucked up shit right now. Let's say all three of us have kids, right? And they're on a football team.
Yep.
And we know, bro, we know our kids are trash. They are trash, right? And instead of being like, yo, y'all lost, you suck, this, that, and the other, like a lot of parents do right now, and they're like, you just need to practice more and blah, 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 blah. But being a grown-up now, I know I'm never going to be an Olympic swimmer. Right. I'm not good at that. Like, I'm just not something that comes natural to me. And I also don't like it. So why am I going to spend all my life doing something that I don't even fucking like to appease some authoritative figure in my life? But when you're talking about participation trophies, what you're rewarding is the effort, right? You don't want your children to quit, because that's a different issue that's going to permeate into other parts of his life. But you're like, hey, bro, good job. Like, you tried, you did everything you fucking could, hell yeah, but let's go pick up this tennis racket, son, and
let's try something new.
Right? It's about like, I can't remember what the word is, but not only positive parenting, but like distracting, right? When somebody's super hyper focused on this thing, and this is the thing that's causing them problems, right? There's this old adage about a snake and a knife, right? And the snake constricts the knife, and it hurts it. So it constricts it harder because it's trying to kill it, not realizing that its constriction is the thing that's hurting itself, and it's the thing that kills it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so
powerful.
Like, they're holding on to this thing, when if they just let this thing go and picked up this, they'd be better off.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been to a lot of therapy, right? EMDR, and for those of you out there who are dealing with whatever, bro, go to the VA, go into therapy. I promise you it'll help. And on the next episode, or the next time we talk, I'm going to talk a lot more in depth in what each one of these therapies are and what they do specifically. But we need to talk about, so in the Army, we have TMs, FMs, and ARs, right? A TM is a technical manual, and it's about a piece of equipment, like a specific piece of equipment, right? Like a radio, a truck, anything. So if you were to draw like a line on a graph, right, and to determine the accuracy of the information or what the information is presenting, it'd be a straight line. There is no deviation from the TM. Like what it says is what it means, mm-hmm. right? But then you have FMs, which are field manuals, and then a field manual is essentially so in the Army, we have something called a battle drill. And a battle drill is a group of collective tasks rapidly executed without the use of a deliberate thought process. So in other words, it's muscle memory, mm-hmm. right? It's doing something so many times that you don't have to think about it to do it, right? So you can talk about, when you watch those cool videos of the Chinese people on the assembly line, and they're just smacking those things off, or like wrapping candy like dumbass fast. Mm-hmm. Like that's what I mean, right? So what that would look like is like a parameter, right? This mm-hmm. is the box in which you can operate, right? These are the choices. It's a collective group of behaviors that if this thing is present, this is what you're going to do. It's a bunch of if and then statements, and both of you are computer logistics, or that's basic machine learning, mm-hmm. right? If this, then this, and that's what FMs do. And then ARs are like, in a long run, you can't do this, and if you do this, this is going to happen. So it's keeping you in like, what is that shit in bowling? The bumpers, right? It's bumpers. So it's essentially telling you what you can and can't do, so you can live your life and never have any issues, right? In the Army, you could just, I know I'm not supposed to do that. I know I'm not supposed to do that. I know I'm not supposed to do that. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
But the problem comes when you get out of the Army. This is you. And you no longer have structure. What you have is opportunity. Right? And you don't have anybody telling you what right is, or what the best way to accomplish this goal that you have. Right? And half the time, you don't even know what goals you do have. So with every opportunity, there's an opportunity cost, right? And with so much opportunity here, it leaves you with no choice. You have so many choices that you don't know what to fucking choose, because we're in the Army, we're so used to general relativity, 1-to-1, right? A line segment, right? This is me. This is my goal. I backwards plan from my goal to achieve it, right? But if I have all of this fucking opportunity, and I have this goal that's over here, and I don't know all the steps in between, that goal looks like it might as well be on Mars. Like, I can't get there. Like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, and there's nobody out here that can really help me.
You're right. Yeah, even our promotion system is very structured. Somebody stays in the military, their idea of success is obtaining rank, getting to the highest rank you possibly can, and all the way from the private all the way up to an E9 or wherever it is you want to be, there is structure. Okay, I got to make these promotion points. Okay, yeah. I got to go to these classes to get my promotion points up. I got to go to college, or I got to go to the board. I got to pass the board. I got to score well my weapons card. I got to do good in PT. You have all these prerequisites already on a piece of paper that tells you essentially this is stuff you need in order for you to go to school to BLC, and BLC is a prerequisite to even be considered to be picked up to, for example, from going to 4 to 5. From 4 to 5, you need to have a passing PT test. You need to not shoot like shit. You need to meet points. And you also need to have, you need to be BLC qualified. And you can't be BLC qualified unless you fucking pass a PT test. And you can have basic English writing skills. You know, you show up, you do your shit, and you get out, you get your cert, and there you go. You've got all the prerequisites you need. Now you need to meet points. And in order for you to meet points, here are all the methods you can utilize in order to get these points to where you need to be. And that's the only thing limiting you from your promotion.
And this is another issue between the Army and the civilian world. In the Army, when I'm in charge, right, my job is to teach the man subordinate of me to take my position, simultaneously learning the position above me. But what you have in the civilian world is a lot of leaders are holding their subordinates back out of fear of looking bad because they don't want them to pass them, right? They don't want to be supplanted, essentially. And that is a very negative belief system that we have, because the people that are in these positions, it's something about self-worth. I'm not sure we can talk about that another time, but there's like a belief there that is maladaptive to a conducive work environment. And that's another climate and culture of work environments that we can talk about. But when we're talking about the veteran community very specifically, right? And PTSD and what PTSD is. So FMs are a group of collective tasks, you know what I'm saying, that you rapidly execute without a deliberate thought process. But the way a deployment works is you live on a fob, right? And this is essentially a safe space, but it's not safe at the same time. Right. So you can be attacked at any time, but it's safer than being out here in sector. Right. This is danger. So every time we would go on patrol, right. And we're going to talk about the TM, right? And this is what I'm going to try to develop a little bit through these podcasts, is a TM about what our body is. Right. And you guys being computer nerds, right? No offense. I love y'all. You guys know what a BIOS is, right? When you're talking about a computer, the basic input-output system of your computer, right? So the basic input-output system of your body is, when you're doing this, right, the first thing we need to know.
And we're the computer nerds. Sorry.
Dude, to be honest with you, I didn't even know what BIOS was. I won't even lie. Like, I just know what you do with it, and you can like go and diagnose shit.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Oh yeah. Well, that's even better. So that's what we're trying to build right now.
Right.
So with your brain, this is the first thing that I really want all of you to understand, is your brain is incapable of differentiating between perceived danger and actual danger. That is number one. So what you see is not always true. And that is the hardest thing for people to understand. And Descartes, he's a philosopher, and he basically, he does this in like a real poetic way or whatever. And he says, like, what if there was a demon in my eye? How would I know what anything was true? Right. And that's kind of the concept that we're talking about, is that what you see, you can't necessarily believe, because your brain cannot process the difference between perceived fear and actual danger, right? And fear can mean a few different things, right? It can mean face or fuck everything and run. It can mean face everything and rise, or it can be false evidence appearing real, right? So when you're leaving the fob, right, your brain does something. So your autonomic nervous system, if you can go to my computer real quick, on my computer screen, your autonomic nervous system in conjunction with your limbic system, right? It creates patterns of behavior based on like long-term memory, or like based on certain situations that you've been in, right? So every time you would go out, these two systems were kicking on in your body, right? And these two things are your fight or flight response and your rest and digest, right? So your autonomic nervous system can be broke down into two things: your sympathetic and your parasympathetic, right? The parasympathetic is activated when organisms are in a relaxed state, regulating body's unconscious actions, rest and digest, or feed and breed, right? But the sympathetic one is activated in cases of emergencies to mobilize energy, right? So you can come back to me. When we were going on deployment, we were turning on our sympathetic nervous system like this, like just it was off on, off on, off on, off on, off on, and we're essentially molesting it to the point where every time there was danger, it would kick on, right? And if you go back to remembering that I said that you can't tell the difference between perceived and actual, now once you come home, right, and this is where PTSD starts taking in, is that certain events have the same emotional response from your limbic system to some event that was from Afghanistan. So these two things are in two different times. Like this is X, this is Y. This first one, this is time, and this is space. This is you, and this is relative to you. So this is a negative experience that you had in Afghanistan, whatever it is. Danger is here. This is a danger. And then if we're going to talk about wavelengths, this would be like IR, right? But time, this would be in the future. So you are perceiving this new thing as it's the same as this old thing. But when you look at this graph, you're like, okay, that doesn't make any sense. But when you're in the event, you can't tell, right? So what your limbic system is doing is it's essentially creating a battle drill of emotional responses and behavioral responses that you fall into. And it's a loop. Like you were saying before about that computer shit of a loop. And until you add something to get out of that loop, you're going to be stuck. And the worst part about this is that you don't even know you're in it until you can see the entire pattern for what it is. Does this make sense to y'all?
Yeah.
So your limbic system and your hippocampus, like spatial memory. So spatial memory is like where you are, right? Relativity to another object. And then in some of our further talks where I'm going to go over map reading and shit, because you asked about purpose, right? And about what it is that the veteran community has, or why do they feel, like they're failing or whatever. And I think it's because they're not viewing what they learned as a positive. We know things that no civilian is ever going to learn unless they go to war. So we have information. We have a lot of information. And this information, what I'm trying to teach or show, guide, I guess is the more word, because I don't think I'm teaching anything, right? I'm just showing a different way to view it. We have information that civilians don't have, right? And we have information that can greatly impact the way that our country is running right now, right? And if you were going to talk about a what do you call it? Like a scientific experiment, or like when you're going to like interview a bunch of people, you know what I'm saying? To get like what do they call that?
Like a survey?
Survey. There you go. If you were to survey, you want the most diverse population, right? To get the most accurate information.
Yep.
Well, what is the most diverse population but also is the most comprehensive population that represents America? And it would be the military. It would be the military. So if you were taking everything that we know and everything that we've been through, right, whether it's mental health or operational knowledge or the way that systems work, because, for instance, the way systems work, right, the way the federal government actually operates, a lot of people are afraid of it, but they don't realize that every single structure or system or organization, it is always made up of a bunch of direct connections, right? It's relationships between human beings. The organization isn't some autonomous creature that exists out there. It's just doing things by itself. We write the code that it works off of. We write the logarithm in which it knows what to do or not to do. And they're just following this logarithm. And what I'm saying is that we know things that we can change this logarithm to be more efficable for every human in America, every American. And I know me and you have talked about this in the past, Hudson, about the police specifically, about some of the systems that we can partner over, or like some ideologies or whatever, you know what I mean?
That just brings up a another point where I know we talked about it briefly earlier, that there's this, stigma where a lot of guys who get out of the military, especially, from combat arms, where they think they don't have any skills or trades or the knowledge to get a good job. But in reality, we discussed that these people actually know a lot more than what they think they know. Like you mentioned, you talk to a sniper about ballistics. This dude's gonna fucking school you up in a manner that a physicist at a collegial level will be able to. Like, this guy has an understanding of a round and how it's affected when the size of the round, the amount of freaking powder in that fucking bullet casing, how far they need to calculate the Earth's, the Earth's curvature depending on, where they're trying to shoot, wind direction, the fucking acceleration of gravity. Like, there's just all these things that a lot of people who exit the military don't know they have. What is that term? That groping or gropping, where people just get physics.
Grok.
Yeah, grokking, where the fuck it is. And I think a lot of service members don't acknowledge the fact that they have that capability. They have these problem solving, these their brain is wired in a way where they're able to come to find better solutions, for lack of better terms. You can go somewhere, for example, myself, I'm really fucking, I'm the youngest dude at where I work at, but it's because of the Army I am where I am, because I approach a lot of these problems with a can-do attitude, where I may not know what the fuck I'm doing or what the fuck I'm looking at, but I know that that there are resources out there. There are, the civilian equivalent of a technical manual. There's engineering sheets or schematics. There's shit that I can go out of my way to learn to find a solution. And a lot of the times, that's what I end up getting recognized for, rather than being a fucking know-it-all dude. You know what I mean? And a lot of people in the military work at Honeywell. That's the location I'm at. And a lot of those guys are fucking military, and they have that same critical thinking skill where they don't just look at something and see a problem, this is a quote that somebody told me at a very young age. His name is, shout out to Mr. Unsworth. He's my fucking history teacher. When I was enlisting, I was asking him to extend one of my homeworks he was a veteran. Yeah, I was telling him if he can extend one of my homeworks because I had football practice. I didn't have time to do that work he was assigning to me. And he looked at me and he said, Enrique, I'm not going to do that for you. And you know why? I was like, why, Mr. Unsworth? Because I'm about to teach you a very good fucking life lesson. He didn't cuss at me, but I'm going to teach you a life lesson. You should always find solutions to every problem that you come across. You should never find problems as to why you can't find a solution. And that just fucking stuck with me. And I was like, you know what? You are absolutely right, because I could stay up later tonight. I can get 2 hours of sleep and still show up, and I would have my project turned in. And I can just stay after school later in the week to learn, to relearn everything I missed out because I was fucking sleeping in class. And he was like, yeah, just get it done. And, after that, I see it more and more and more when I'm in the military, where you get good soldiers that will do everything and anything that it takes to get the mission done. And then you get soldiers who just try to find ways to sham out of work. They don't want to do their part. And I don't know. I just think the military community, when they first get out, they kind of lose a sense of direction. They don't feel as unique or as special as they once felt while they were wearing the uniform. And I think that way of thinking is wrong. I think anybody who gets out, no matter what your job is, you have skills and capabilities that can solve problems, that can contribute to a company, that can contribute to our society, that can make America overall a better place. That's you, straight up. Anytime I hear about a veteran that committed suicide or a veteran that's homeless, I get really upset, because I know that it didn't have to be that way. They may not have seen that they have these resources, but I know that they have these resources. They just didn't reach out and access them. Anyways, if you're a fucking vet, you're worthy, bro. Straight up. You're worth it.
It sounds to me like you're discussing cognitions, and every cognition is about yourself. So you have negative and positive ones, and one of the most common negative ones is I am not worthy.
Yeah.
Right? some people believe that they're not worth, good things.
Mm-hmm.
And that belief creates it depends on with that other graph, to talk about the sniper thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
These motherfuckers know calculus on a level that most people don't.
Oh, facts. Yeah, facts.
But when you're talking about worth, if you say I'm not worthy, that would be a negative belief about yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this would be the negative quadrant. But then you have to do a little bit of bracketing, and that's something that I'm going to talk about in one of our future episodes about, like, call for fire. You know what I'm saying? So in bracketing, you have to go above and below the target. So you have to ask yourself two questions. Why? Why do I believe this? Okay. What is the cause of this worth? Why do I think that I'm not worthy? Right? And in my therapy, you know what I'm saying? One of them was because of the way I was raised, right? And the relationship in which I had with my mother at the time, or my father, depending on how you want to look at it. But that would be me and something other than me. And my issue with divine command theory is that I was allowing this thing that's other than me control the way that I see me. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. What do they call it? Fucking imposter syndrome? I'm serious, yeah.
It's I don't know about that specifically. But when you're thinking about it because of something else, right? Why do I think I'm not worthy? Well, it's because this person didn't do this, or this, that, and the other. Well, that's not about you, right? There's only two things in life you can control, and that is your actions and your reactions, and your emotions fall into that. So when you're victimizing yourself, right, you may actually be a victim. Sure, I'm not debating whether or not you're a victim. I'm debating on your reality that you are seeing. Right? Are you taking something from it, or are you allowing that negativity to just keep you where you are? Right? Every single thing in life you can learn from. Right? It doesn't matter what it is. Right? You have a shitty NCO. Right? I've had a lot of them. What can you learn from a shitty NCO? Well, you can learn what not to do.
Exactly. Yeah.
I learned what I didn't want to be. Right?
Yeah.
And that's a positive. That's a gain. So this event in my life now becomes positive.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I just switched it. I just changed it up, and then it no longer causes me any issues. But when you're talking about self-worth, right? And one of the most common things is survivor's guilt, right? It's a friend of yours died while you were deployed, right? A good friend. And then you start to ask whether or not you were supposed to be in that seat and the trip ticket changed or whatever it may be. You start to ask yourself a question. Why him and not me? Why did I live? Why did I get to be the one that's alive? Why? Yeah. And then you start to remember who that dude was. That dude was better than me. That dude was always nice. That dude was a better father. He was an NCO. He knew more than I did. Why am I the one that's alive? Like, I don't deserve to be here. He does. He's the one that deserves to be here, right? And then what are you telling yourself in that same sentence? That you're not worth being alive. And that's where you end up in this I am worthless feeling. And then you stay down in there and you continue that belief, and then nothing pulls you out of that loop. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then when you go to therapy, right? Men, this is my biggest issue with masculinity, and a lot of people are going to be like, "There's no problem with it," but there's a very large problem with masculinity. What you get taught as a man when it comes to your emotions is that you shouldn't feel anything. You shouldn't feel them. The moment you feel something bad, push it away. Push it away. Get it away from you. You don't want to feel bad, right? And that's my issue with a lot of these spiritual people, and it's all egocentric and it's about yourself. But in actuality, what you need to be doing when you're having that negative feeling is to feel it. You have to accept that feeling for what it is instead of trying to make it something that it's not. Like, feel it all the way through, and then ask yourself, why do I feel this way? Yeah. What is it about this? Why? What would be so bad if I'm not the best? Well, how can I fix that? You fucking do better, right? I live by the maxim, be a better man today than I was yesterday. Yeah. And if I'm not, fuck it, tomorrow's a new day, right? Yeah, like you can always get better. You can always get better. You can always get better. And it's about gaining this new thing to make yourself more. Like if you feel like you're missing something or you feel like you're sad or whatever, you don't want to stay in that hole, bro. And the issue is that a lot of people, what I've heard a lot of my veteran friends say when they go to therapy is that they don't understand, they don't know what we've been through, they don't know what's going on, whoop-de-whoop and yada yada. But then that goes back to language, right? And my point about literacy at the very beginning of this thing, right? Let's say Hudson. Yeah. I have a picture in my mind, right? And I'm going to draw it on this board. Right? That's the picture I'm holding in my mind. Without this symbol, right? Because that's what it is at the end of the day. It's a symbolism. How do I describe this to you, right? This picture that I'm holding in my mind, or this thought, or this idea, I describe it with language, with words. So my capacity to express myself is directly tied to the tool of language. You see what I'm saying?
Correct. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then your capacity to understand me is your ability to understand said language. So in between us, there's this ethereal, abstract form that is language. So that I can take this picture, put it out here, give it to you, you describe it back to me, and I'm like, wait, no, not that, it's this. This is what it's from me. So that's my subjective experience. And your subjective experience is what creates the objective reality. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you go back to Afghanistan and literacy, if you can say that language is acquired, which it is, right, by just being around people who speak it. That's why babies, when they're born, they pick up their natural language and you don't actually have to teach them anything. However, you are the sum value of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if you're around a bunch of retards or idiots that don't really have a diverse vocabulary, your capacity to express what it is that you're dealing with or feeling is diminished. So that's the connection between literacy and the ability to express yourself. And a lack of ability to express yourself is a direct link to a heightened state of aggression or a heightened state of frustration or anger. Because let's say, this is going to be another anecdotal experience, but when I used to fight all the time in Germany and I used to beat the shit out of people for calling me a bitch or a pussy or whatever, right? People like to give the argument that it's because you called me a bitch. Like, no, motherfucker, it's because I felt something in me. You can't give me an emotion, right? But the image of what that is telling me, the reflection of that is telling me that I'm a bitch or I'm a pussy. And I feel that about myself. So I have to prove it to you. And I have to make you feel something. So my goal at the end of that is to make you feel what it is that I'm feeling by beating the shit out of you. So I'm allowing another man not only to control my emotions, but to control my behavior. So what control or what autonomy do I actually have by doing that string of events? You see what I'm saying?
Need a safer bank. I've been saving change. I need some space. Chatting in my face. Get from around my way.